So I've got this old canoe, but it's kind of heavy and it's somewhat awkward to manoeuvre. And with the addition of like fishing gear, trolling motor, battery, it just becomes a lot of a chore to get it into the water. So I wanted to get something smaller and lighter. But when I started looking at the prices, you know, you're talking like $1,000 for a fishing kayak. So I started thinking about making one. I had the idea of foam, looked around on the internet, see if anyone had done it already, and of course they had, and watched a few videos. Started to think about how I'd like to rig it, and started thinking about making it, and drew up a cutting plan based on 4x8 rigid foam insulation boards and with 2-inch thickness, and made a sort of a cardboard rough out just to check that everything worked. Saw that it did, went out and bought the foam, and now I've started the project. So mostly based off of two YouTubers, one of which is AF Caveman, and the other one I think is called NiteWolfe. And AF Caveman, you can Google, or so you can look for it on YouTube. He's made something he calls the Battle Yak, which looks awesome. And NiteWolfe has made something called the Wolf Yak, which also looks awesome. So I didn't see any of the cutting plans. Don't think they included it in their videos, but I had a rough idea. I wanted something that was close to something I'd seen. I've been looking around in Bass Pro and Canadian Tire, and I settled on a length of 12 feet 8 inches and a width of 32 inches, because from what I'd seen, people were saying it's difficult to paddle stuff that's wider than that. So those are the dimensions that I sort of went for. 3 sheets look to be about right, which gives you a cost, at least in Canada, of close to $300 for the glue and the boards, and that's not including putting poor man's fiberglass on, or putting on the plywood, which I'm going to include, which I haven't bought yet. So it's probably going to cost out to around $400, but it will be completely custom built, so it'll be exactly the way I want it. So I've been going out fishing a lot on my canoe, trying to figure out where I'd like to put stuff. My canoe's a 16.5 foot 2-person beast that weighs like 85 pounds. And this kayak should come out, I'm thinking it's going to come out at less than 45 pounds. Without, obviously, the addition of batteries and trolling motor. So how did I set about doing the cutting plan? Well, there's the cutting plan, you can see it there. Basically, yeah, just sketched out what I wanted and then figured out how it was gonna, scaled it up. So I put it onto squared paper where every square is 4 inches by 4 inches. Worked out the size, sort of drew out rectangles that would represent the sheets as you buy them as 4 feet by 8 feet, and then started trying to fit what I'd wanted to make inside those sheets and figuring out how I was going to cut it to have the least wastage. Then I made one out of polystyrene and scrapped it because I didn't like the look of it, and then I made another one out of card where I measured the thickness of the card and scaled everything up. And then once I'd sort of assembled it and saw that I liked how it was roughly going to turn out, I started cutting. And so to cut it, you need to put basically a grid, a set of squares on your board. So I just used the chalk line, marked up 4-inch intervals all the way on the sides, and then just made like a square grid pattern. And from that I transferred the curves a bit by eyeball, but that didn't work really well, so I needed sort of like a bending edge, and I found out a thin bit of dowling worked quite well for that. As well as looking at the curve I was trying to copy, I could sort of push it into the right shape, and so that gave me the curves. And once I cut the first curve, that sort of became the template for the rest. just flipped it over. And then that's it. So next up, so I'm going to cut all the pieces out. I'm going to glue it, pin it, and then I'm going to sculpt it. Yeah, so that's about where I am so far. Stay tuned.